And now on the line is Barry Grant, the CEO of Problem Gambling Ireland. Barry, welcome to the programme.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me on.
Alright, Barry, we're doing this interview today because I saw some mentions on your Problem Gambling Ireland Facebook and Twitter pages that said that this week marks the 5-year anniversary of something. Can you tell our listeners what is this anniversary, and can you tell us what it means to you as an addiction counsellor and the CEO of Problem Gambling Ireland?
Well, it's the 5th anniversary of the publication of the Gambling Control Bill back in 2013, July 15th. Alan Shatter, the then Minister for Justice, published it, and it's a very progressive, well thought out piece of legislation. Unfortunately, it's been sitting on a shelf in the Department of Justice for the last 5 years. What that means is that thousands of people with gambling problems and family members who are impacted are left without services. There's nobody there to regulate the gambling industry because the Gambling Control Bill would create the office of a regulator, so the gambling industry in Ireland can essentially do whatever they want without being policed or regulated in any way. And there's no funding for gambling addiction services or problem gambling services of any kind, and that bill would actually create a social fund to fund those services. So that's the impact that it's having by leaving it sitting there, doing nothing for 5 years.
Yeah, I've only really become aware of the size of the problem gambling Ireland, the problem in Ireland over the last several years when a bookies open in the shops beside my parents' house, and I see a lot of people going in there, people that I know, and they're going in there more than they're going fairly regularly, I find it incredible that this bill still has not been enacted yet. What excuses have the government given over the last 5 years, Barry, as to why the bill still has not been legislated for?
Well, for about the first 3 years, there were no excuses were given at all. I don't think anybody was really pushing them too hard on it. The last couple of years, Minister of State Stanton, who's responsible for it, has been saying that, because so much time has passed, more research has to be done and the bill has to be updated. And personally, I think that's a bit of a cop-out. There haven't been any radical changes in the gambling environment in the last 5 years. And when you consider that the legislation that we currently have is from 1929, 1931 and 1956, that even if you brought in legislation that was 5 years old today, it would still be light years ahead of what we currently have on the books.
Fianna Fáil now have a bill on this topic, don't they?
Yeah, essentially, Fianna Fáil took the original 2013 bill, changed the date to 2018 and resubmitted it. There are some minor changes there for kind of constitutional reasons. So that's great to see. Essentially, they're putting pressure on the government, and because it was basically the original bill, the government couldn't turn around and say, well, we're not going to pass it through to second stage. So that was a very positive move. It was great to see Fianna Fáil coming out and doing that. So actually we've seen some movement now in the last few months.
So it's past the first stage of the Oireachtas, is it?
Yeah, now there are about 11 stages. So it's only gone to second stage, and obviously there'll be a lot more debating to do before it gets enacted. But it's the first bit of progress really in 5 years.
Yesterday, before our interview, I was doing a bit of research on the latest news on this topic, and David Staunton, that's his name, he was saying at the start of this year, in January or something, he tried to maybe start the process again. But what happened? Something happened at the start of this year, didn't it? Do you know about that?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Yeah, we were consulted on it late last year. They were going to do something called the Miscellaneous Provisions Bill, which they do every year. They just kind of, any amendments or changes to existing laws, they can just kind of ball them up into this Miscellaneous Provisions Bill, which normally happens in January. So it would cover loads of different things. But one of the things they were looking at within that was that they would amend the 1929 Totalisator Act. Now, that applies to tote betting, a sort of racetrack. So under the current legislation, a child of any age can gamble or can place a bet at a racetrack, horse track or greyhound track in Ireland. So they were going to update that. I don't know why they haven't done that since 1929. They still haven't done it. That was going to happen in January. Also, they were looking at making some changes to the Gaming and Lotteries Act of 1956. I mean, if you look at some of the provisions in that, first of all, slot machines are prohibited completely in the state under that act. So every single slot machine that operates in Ireland is doing so illegally, but with the license that's been provided to it by the government, even though the government knows that they're prohibited. Even if you look at the maximum stake on a gaming machine in Ireland, it's still sixpence, right? The maximum stake is still sixpence. The maximum payout is 10 shillings. So basically, since we went decimal in 1971, every single machine in the country, whether it's a slot machine or not, is also in kind of breaching the law as it stands. So they were going to bring in some changes there. They consulted us and the Rutland Centre on it. And one of the things in the original act states that it's prohibited for a licensed premises that sells alcohol to have any gaming machines. And they were going to remove that section. And we raised serious concerns about that because having alcohol and gambling in the same place is a really, really bad idea. So that was at the end of last year. The plan was that they would do the miscellaneous provisions in January, but as far as I'm aware, none of that has gone through yet.
And you said something about tote betting. Is that children betting, is it?
Well, the tote, if you've ever been to a racetrack, you have on-track betting.
Go on, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Tote is racetrack betting, so there will be bookmakers operating at the racetrack, so there's a special legislation for that. But there's no age limit written into that legislation, so children of any age, and quite a lot of people who have been in contact with our service so that I would see for counselling, if you ask them to go back and remember the first bet or the first time that they gambled, they'll tell you, I was at a racetrack and I put £1 on a horse and it won. And they could have been 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years of age, which is completely legal, but completely bizarre that we still have that rule in place.
I was reading that recently, just as you said there, a lot of people who have gambling problems today can trace their experience back to being children at for example, a racetrack, putting a bet on a horse or whatever, I was personally fortunate. I don't think I've ever been to a race course as a child, and I've only been maybe once ever in my life. The other thing I was reading about, the Minister, David Stanton, Stanton, is it?
I'm never sure. I think it's spelled Stanton, but a lot of people pronounce it Stanton.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay, I was reading that one of the last times he was trying to progress this bill, his own bill, through the Oireachtas 5 years ago, the discussions on it broke down and he didn't get consensus. Is this another way of saying that the gambling companies gave him a tough time and he kind of just dropped it, like?
I'm not sure. I mean, there will be a very powerful lobby, all right, and of course any industry that creates a lot of employment can go in and to the government and say, well, look, this is going to impact on thousands of jobs. So, I mean, that is always there, and all industries and all sectors of society lobby the government. So, I mean, it may have been that. I mean, the interesting thing is at the time, back in 2013, when the bill was published, the Fianna Fáil Labour government at the time had a massive majority and could have done whatever they wanted. They didn't need to have a consensus,
I think it's going to be somewhat humiliating for the government, and especially for Fianna Fáil, if it is in fact a Fianna Fáil bill that passes through the Oireachtas, given how big the problem of gambling is. And I mean, because they haven't dealt with the issue over 5 years, so if it's their fault for not doing that. And I mean, Barry, how would you like you're as well as the CEO of Problem Gambling Ireland, you're an addiction counsellor. Like how will you find say for example, like over the last 5 years, if you're working that long in the sector, like how bad are the problem gambling problems that you come across with? Like
it's becoming worse all the time because we've gone from a situation where gambling in Ireland would have been amusement arcades and bookie shops. If you go back, say, 20 years, bookie shops would have been 99% of the gambling there would have been on horse racing and greyhound racing, and that was it, end of story. But within that 20 years, the gambling industry, especially the bookmakers, have made radical changes. So they've brought in things like rugby, football, betting on who shot JR, as people who are old enough to remember Dallas and all this sort of stuff. And now you can bet on everything. The opening hours are longer. There's Sunday opening. And then you had the development of online gambling, and that was an absolute game changer because people could sit at home on their computers or laptops and gamble on anything and everything 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And then we had smartphones. And now anybody has access to online gambling in their pocket at any time. There are people contacting us who are gambling at their desks in work on their phones or going into the toilet to gamble at all times of the day, or they're staying up till 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning gambling on their phones or on their computers. So there's been a huge change there, even in the last 5 years, in terms of the harm that is being experienced now. I mean, smartphone gambling has been around for the last 5 years. Online gambling has been around for longer than that. So there's no radical changes in the technology, but more and more and more people are getting sucked into it, especially younger men. You're talking about the bookmakers beside your parents' house, but imagine you're seeing a lot of mostly men and a lot of young guys maybe in their 20s going in there, and it's having a huge impact. Like if you're only on a social welfare payment, maybe 100 or 188 a week, and you're going in and you're losing half of that or even all of it, that's going to have a massive impact on you, on your mental health, on your ability to pay your bills, look after yourself and do things that you want to do. And it's very, very easy to lose 100 quid or 188 quid, especially if you're gambling online, because the money doesn't feel real. You're just looking at numbers on a screen. So all of this stuff has a huge impact.
And children and teenagers are getting roped into it as well. Online, I think it's through online gambling, isn't it? Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'd have a lot of people contacting us. I mean, about their teenage children. One of the few pieces of data that we have in Ireland about online gambling in children comes from the European School Survey from 2015. That found that I think it was 13% of males aged 15 to 16, that was the age group that they looked at, had gambled online, just online in the previous week. Now that's a lot of 15 and 16-year-olds. It doesn't count, when we've done surveys, the biggest one would be scratch cards and lottery products. And online was way down. So definitely there's a big concern there. We've done surveys in schools where 67% of the 4th, 5th and 6th years were already gambling.
Sure.
You know what I mean? If you get sucked in at that age, and if you got, say, if you had your own money or if you got access to your parents' credit card or debit card, you can get into serious trouble. And we've had plenty of parents contacting us because their teenage child had maxed out the credit card with an online gambling site where the age wasn't verified.
It's depressing to listen to all this, Barry, and I well believe what you're saying, and I think it's the biggest eye opener for me has been since the bookies near my parents opened. You know what I mean? Because it's a state where I grew up, and I'm living in this part of Dublin about 30 years, and it only opened several years ago, and like it's a busy bookies, and unsurprisingly there's a pub about 20 metres away from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I see people they're in the pub, going in, putting on bets, and as you were saying a few minutes ago, now you can bet on all different. You can even bet on the general election, but occasionally bookie companies, I think, even commission opinion polls. Paddy Power do, don't they, on the general election very occasionally?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the polls or the odds done by the bookies are probably considered to be some of the most accurate. Because there's money involved. You know, if Ipsos or somebody else does a poll, that's one thing. But if people are betting on the outcome of something, then there's a lot of money at stake. You know?
Yeah, it is depressing. Just going through all this. You know what I mean? The extent of the problems, and you're dealing with every day. You're dealing with a lot more detail than talking about the big picture. You're dealing with the micro issues as well. Barry, is there anything else you want to tell our listeners before we finish up talking? And can you tell us how our listeners can help you on your work?
Well, just the first thing, I know you mentioned the word depressing there a couple of times, and look, it's grim, and we're not where we want to be at the moment. But just say to anybody with a gambling problem out there, or a family member who's been affected by it, don't give up hope. You know, people have gotten into serious difficulty with their gambling problems, gotten themselves into bad places, and they've managed to come out the other side. They've stopped. They've gone into recovery, they've paid off their debts, and they've gotten back into good places. So I suppose there's always hope, right? And don't give up hope if you have a gambling problem. If people want to help us, definitely, you know, we're looking at a general election coming up. If anybody listening has ever been affected by problem gambling, either themselves or through a family member, if your local TD comes knocking on your door in the next few months, you know, if you want to raise the issue of the gambling control bill or the fact that we don't have any gambling regulation in Ireland, and just put some pressure on the TDs at local level, because that makes a huge difference. Or if anybody wants...
Go ahead, yeah.
Now, if anybody wants to donate, we're trying to fundraise to fund a full-time helpline and outreach service. They can do that through our website as well. Well, anybody who's looking for information and advice on any of the support services that are available in Ireland, they can get them on our website.
Yeah, just something you said. I know there's also the public health alcohol bill that's going through the Oireachtas as well. I understand most of the stages of that bill have gone through that process. Do you know, there's expected to be a general election, I think it's going to be in the autumn or next year, probably the autumn, I think. If the gambling control bill hasn't been enacted before then, and there's a general election and the Dáil comes back for the next government, new Dáil, will the gambling control bill have to start the process again, do you know?
Yeah, it goes back to the beginning, so that's it. Any of the stages that it would have gone through up to that point will be wiped, and it'll be back to square one, unfortunately, yeah.
And I also, as I mentioned, the public health alcohol, I also have a big interest in that. And you're saying there about don't give up hope. I had a drink problem for several years, binge drinking, so I gave up drinking. I'm off for 8 years, so there is hope, you know what I mean? Okay,
absolutely.
Barry, it's great talking to you, Barry. I'll be talking to you again. Hopefully there'll be some big developments over the next few months, you know what I mean, before the end of the year, and hopefully I hope for two big reasons, probably other reasons, but the two big reasons off the top of my head I can think of is this act, the gambling control bill, and the public health alcohol bill. I'd like to see these enacted before there's a general election. I mean, and I'm saying this as someone who's interested in politics and kind of likes the buzz of general elections, you know.
Yeah.
So I hope.
Oh, definitely, it's really important that the public health alcohol bill is enacted.
Yeah.
Before we go into general, because I mean a huge amount of work has been put into that, and so many amendments and so many changes, and 3 people per day die from alcohol-related causes. So I'd agree with you 100% on that one.
You probably have people with dual diagnosis, alcohol and gambling problems that you deal with.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a huge kind of cross over there, a huge percentage of cross addiction. So a lot of people with gambling problems will have alcohol or drug problems. Yeah.
Okay, Barry, it's great talking to you. I'll be talking to you again over the next few months. Before the end of the year, hopefully we can do another interview. If there's positive developments, So hopefully there will be. So I'll be talking to you. So thanks very much, Barry. Right.
Brilliant. Thanks, Darren. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.